Hello, hello everyone. This is Huijie. Today we'll be talking about game effect. I think game effect is a basic component of weapon, stage ability, and buff in the Snowplay data editor. So I will also talk about the types that I conclude and the game effect chain, and talk about a little bit about target, source caster, point, entity. These are stuff that determine who or where your current effects is targeting at. And I will be talking about entity scope and entity parents as part of the determining effects targeting stuff. And then I will give two examples about the Gaunt bouncing projectile and Maloc Cinder Storm Ultimate. So let's start it. So game effects. What are game effects? If you go to the editor and you just search game effect in the types, you can see dozens of game effects, and you probably lost it. You won't know what they are doing, right? So let's see. So game effects, there are two types of game effects. I would say there is game effect that can execute another effect, and there is also game effect that cannot execute another effect. And speaking of executing effect above, unit data and the response can also execute the effects such as above. They have the periodic stuff that can like you can do effect every 0.1 seconds to do a healing, do a damage, whatever you want. For unit data, there is a like effect burst, effect dash that you can do things to your nearby unit and structures. Response, there is a response damage, response weapon, something like that. So you can do extra things when you damage another entity. And so if we want to be more specific about these game effects, I would say there are five types of game effects: finder, entity, organizer, executor, and helper. So finder is are game effects that can give you one or more entities, like game effect search radius and search and another search. Right, they are different, just different shapes. They all gives you find you one or more entities in an area so that you can execute more game effects. For example, if you want to do an AoE damage, of course, there is game effect damage radius if you have been familiar with over editor, but you can also do like you can use a game effect search radius to find a bunch of units in a circle and apply a game effect damage to all the targets to all the target entities that you find, right? And there are also game effects that redirect. So what are these? Redirect cargo and redirect transport. These are for units with cargo abilities. So like a evac, right? You have an evac that can store 6 or 10 different kinds of units inside of it. But what if you want to do something to the unit in your cargo? You cannot use search radius in most of the times because those for those cargo units for those units that already be loaded into a transport, you cannot find them. So you can use game effect redirect cargo to find all the cargo of a transport unit like a evac, and you can do things to them. You can do damage, apply buff, whatever you want. And so game effect redirect transport is just similar to cargo, but on the opposite way. So if you already get a cargo somehow, and you can use this to find its transport. And there are also game effect redirect hero and redirect top bar. So hero, usually a player only has one hero unit, right? And it's possible that a player have multiple heroes in the futures. And also there is also a top bar, which is a top bar unity. Oh, not unity. There is also a top bar unit that if you are familiar with the old co-op or just familiar with the co-op in StarCraft 2, you may notice that every commander has toolbar abilities, right? These are in Stormgate, these abilities are stored on a specific unit called toolbar unit. So this is a unit you cannot see, doesn't exist in your game world with your eyes, but there is an entity, there is a unit called toolbar unit hidden somewhere in the game, and you need to use GameFAQ redirect toolbar to find it because you cannot use search radius to find such a unit as well. And let's get to the entity. We have GameFAQ persistent, launch projectile, and create unit. So create unit is pretty straightforward. You because you create a unit, it can do whatever you want, right? Like I said, unit data can execute other game effects, and game effect persistent is just like a ground effect that keep doing AOE dot damage, or it's just psionic storm, right? In the StarCraft 2, it's something persistent. It's an entity actually. It's an entity. It actually also has a body. It probably get Unreal Actor, so they can you can see a fire burning in a circle, right? You can see the storm, and you can see different kind of effects. But but the persistent as an entity is different from a unit. It's more efficient. You don't need you don't need a unit for Sonic Storm because it didn't has vitals, right? It you don't want to create a piece of fire on the ground that has health point, has energy, or even has pathfinding logic, right? Unless you want it, but most of cases you don't need this. So this is where we want to use persistent. And there is also gamific launch projectile. Just shoot a missile from point A to point B, from entity A to entity B, right? Unit A to unit B. Uh, and this kind of projectile is also an entity. When a missile impact on its target location or target unit, it can execute impact effects that do something. And also while a missile is traveling, you can also try to do other stuffs like skill shots or just periodic game effects like search a radius around the missile to destroy trees. All different kind of things you can do with projectile. And the third type is organizer. It help you to organize the other game effects. There are game effect set and game effect switch. I actually don't believe there are more. But there maybe have more in the future. So let's get to take a look at what game effect set is. So game effect set is just are effects that can execute a list of multiple effects at the same tick with the order. So it has the order. The earlier effect will execute earlier, but this all should happen at the same tick, ideally. unless one of these effect has something like a timer if it's a persistent. But but the but even though that persistent where the initial effect where happened at the same time, right? So yeah, game effect sets are just a set of different game effects so that you can execute when something happens. So let's give a better I'm trying to give you a better example. So if we find out a missile game effect launch projectile or the missile launcher, we usually a missile launch projectile, right? It's launched from somewhere to somewhere, and when it reaches its destination, it will execute the impact effect. And this is just a reference of one effect. So if you shoot a projectile and you want to uh, so if you shoot a projectile and you want to do damage to a target, you can just put a game effect damage here in the impact effect. But if you want to damage your target and also slow it, you may want to put a game effect set here, right? Put a game effect set with a game effect damage and a game effect apply buff that's that apply above that will also slow your target. And let's see, game effect switch. Game effect switch is something like it's just another game effect set with some condition, I would say. So it has a default action and it can have a list of different cases with validator. We will be talking about the validator in the future. But just imagine we I'm trying to shoot a projectile at a target entity, and this projectile can be shoot to both your enemy or your alliance or your own units, right? But if it's your allied unit, you may want to heal it. If it's your if it's your enemy units, you may want to damage it. So this is where we want to use game effect switch. So we can put default to be like a damaging effect, but with with the case that with a validator to check if the target entity is a friendly unit. If it's a friendly unit, we just use game effect heal instead of game effect damage, right? And so since we have already talked about this, I'm gonna show you the last two. Uh, this is the most common game effect, the executor. Ex executor. So we have like game effect damage, game effect heal, game effect revive, apply buff, remove buff, etc. These are all very straightforward names. And we also have a helper, I call it helper. It's called game effect store value. So this actually also does some jobs, but not the job that players can actually see in the game world. So when you do a damage, do a heal, do a revive, apply a buff, remove a buff, players can notice that, right? But if you use game effect store value, nothing gonna happen. So what it does is it stores some values on an entity blackboard. And why do we need this? Let me give you an example. Let's say I have an ability that will apply a buff to yourself that make your immune to all damage for 10 seconds. But after 10 seconds, you will receive all the damage that you were immune to in the last 10 seconds, right? So how do we, that will be a game effect damage, but how do we like specify this amount? We cannot just put a number in it. We need to access. So when you are being damaged during these 10 seconds, we want to store this value on the entity's blackboard. And after 10 seconds, when we are ready to do this skin effect damage, we just put this stored value to be as the amount of this skin effect damage, right? This is why we need something like game effect store value. It keeps track of the info through this process, through these game effects chains. So what are game effect chains? So the weapon and stage ability are just a chain of different game effects. So when there is a weapon or there is a stage ability, there always has a first effect. I'm gonna show you what this means. If you look at any weapon data, it has a weapon fire. So in this case, it's a missile launcher. So when this weapon fire, it shoot a missile to somewhere, to someone, right? This is the first effect. But when this effect impact, it may do a damage. So it's a chain. And for stage ability, it's also the same. First stage ability, it had the cascade effect as its first effect. Then this effect can do all different kind of stuffs. And speaking of stage abilities, what is a stage ability? Stage ability is the actual ability most players will be aware of. Because if we check other abilities, we have attack ability, right? Cargo, construct, harvest. There's just a few of archetypes for each, right? The spawn and morph are different. So for morph ability, this is for morphing a unit. So it's change a unit to be another unit. So like lift off land. So there are like floating flying structures that can land or lift off. What they are actually doing is they use morph ability to transform themselves. So there is a for arc ship there is a like a landing version of an arc ship and also a flying version of an arc ship. And when you use lift off or land ability, they actually just morph them from a version to another version. There is also artillery mech that's like they have deployed and undeployed version. It's just like the siege mode, right? For tanks in StarCraft 2. When it's in siege mode, it's actually morphed to become another unit. It's no longer the same unit as it was. So, and also there are like tire up. So like HQ, there are tires, three tires of HQ headquarters. When you level up your HQ, what it does, it actually tire up. It's just morphed to a higher tier HQs. And there are also spawn ability. It has a bunch of archetypes. These are just for structure that can train units. And then so stage ability is what actually what players' first impression were about the active abilities, right? These are all different kinds of active abilities that you can imagine for the units and caster units or like hero units. So, so weapon and stage ability are just a chain of game effects. And then we will be talking a little bit about effect scope. So the effect scope, if you can see this, I just place this here. So when the next effect is ready to be executed, the effect scope info of the current effect will be passed to the next effect that is being ready to execute it. So it will record info such as target entity, target location, source entity, and source location, etc. It didn't sometimes most of the time they sometimes they don't have all of those info. I will talk about this more later because I can just get straight to get to this. here. So when your effect chain is not working as you expect, think about if any scope info is lost during the chain. So you have like have a weapon that can attack a target. We also have weapon that can attack a ground, right? When you issue a weapon or issue an attack ground ability to target a specific position, there is no initial target entity. So this piece of info is missing. So if you have for such weapon, if your first effect, your initial effect is trying to access target entity as the entity location, it will fail because there is no such info. The same as the stage ability that can target at a specific location. Yeah. And let's get to the effect target and the effect location. So these two are the info what you're gonna choose to make sure these effects, the current effects target. So if we, for the effect target, we can just target source caster. These are the stuff that inherited from the parent effect. And some effects are using effect location instead of effect target, but you still need to choose between target, source, and caster. But you also need to choose entity or point. So there are three options as well: entity or point, entity, and point. So the first is the default one, and the entity and point are more specific. So when do you need will you see effect location instead of effect target? This is usually for effects that didn't need an entity to execute, such as game effect persistent, game effect search radius, game effect damage radius, because these effects can be executed at a location or the location of an entity. Because if you're doing a search area, you don't need a specific entity, right? If you want to do an AOE, it just happen. A damage radius, it just has happened at somewhere. But if you want to do game effect damage, right, you cannot damage a ground, right? Right, you need a specific entity to trigger that. That's why some effects need effect location, but some effect need effect target. So speaking more about target source and caster, source and target can be changed from effect to effect in the chain, but the caster is always the original source. And in most cases, this means the unit that fires the ability or use the weapon to attack. And we will talk about more with the example. So when your effect chain is not working as you expect, think about if any scope is lost during the chain. We have talked a little bit of this before. And extra stuff is there is also stage ability that happens instantly. And this is actually just another stage ability target unit, but target self. What this means for stage ability for target unit or target ground, these are abilities that you need to choose the target actor. So it is using base target actor, right? So for this kind of target actor, you need to, let's say it's this is an ability on your key Q. You press Q, and then you need to press at a specific location or specific unit to make that happen, right? But there are also abilities that happen instantly. So you for those kind of abilities, you need to choose instant target actor. So for example, you just want to press Q and buff yourself to heal yourself to apply an AoE damage around you, right? It is what I mean about target self and instant. You don't need to click that ability button and another time. So in this case, target source and caster are all the same entity. Uh, yeah. So when you should care using entity point for entity location, So this is what we were talking about, right? The effect location. So an entity or just usually a unit can move around all the time. So if you are making a channeling ability and trying to access the effect scope of a parent effect, like a effect that happened 2 seconds ago, that entity's current location could be different from the entity's location 2 seconds ago. So there is a difference between like caster entity and caster location uh, in your effect parent. Let's give you an example. So you want to shoot a projectile to location A and go back to you, or maybe you want the projectile go to the location A and go back to where you shoot it. So these are two different things, right? For the first situation, you want that projectile shoot and go back to you, no matter where you are. You may have been moving very fast throughout the map, but you want that projectile to go back to you, make a curve. But for the second situation, you just want that uh, projectile to go back to where it started. You don't want it to go back to you. So in these cases, both of these situations, we launch a projectile to the first target, location A. After it reached the location A, we want to shoot another projectile with launch projectile 2. And for the first launch projectile, for the first missile launcher, where it should target, it's always the target location. It's the location A, right? You just for the effect location, you just choose target location. But for the projectile 2, what's its target location? You need to choose caster entity if you want that to go back to you. You can also, and you need to choose caster location if you want that projectile go back to where you shoot it. Or to be more specifically, you may want to use the origin caster entity or origin caster location, so you can get the correct location point. And so since we mentioned effect parent, what is effect parent? So in effect location and effect target, we need to choose target. Sometimes we need to choose entity or point. But there is also effect parent that we were talking about a little bit about. So effect parent is default by none, which means you are using the current effect scope that inherit from your parent, from the effect that triggered this current effect, right? And you can use specific parent effect scope by type its archetype ID. I will show you right down later for our first example. And if the effect parent is origin, like we see it here, it means the effect is using the effect scope of the very first effect, which is the effect scope that you inherit from the weapon or staged ability. And let's go to see the example to be understand this better. So this is Gaunt's weapon. It's a bouncing projectile. It can actually bounce 3 times, but I'm gonna just show you for the first two projectile. So if you look at the ability editor, you can for the ability editor, you can see ability, buff, and weapons. Actually, three different things. And if you take a look at this, you will see it. You can see the whole chain, how these are trigger another effect. And so if you prefer more like visualized stuff, you can check these abilities uh, editor. I personally am more prefer using the data editor. So I'm gonna show you things here. Okay, because you can find all the gun. If you name these things correctly, you can browsing through all these stuffs quickly, right? So it has bounce missile one, missile launcher one, and it has a set that do a search radius to find your next target. And if you find your next target, it will shoot another missile. And for the this set, it also do a damage because when you for your first missile that's find the if its launch impact the target, you may also want to do damage to it, right? So let's see these steps by steps. So the first step is launch projectile. There is worker one and worker two. You have the first bounce missile launcher one as a game effect launch projectile. Its launch location is source entity, which is a Gaunt here. The impact location is target entity, which is the worker one because you were like left click on ground or left click on this specific unit. So and so far the effect the target has not been changed. It's always the unit that you are targeting at. So you don't need to change anything here. So the target entity is the worker one, is the thing, is the one you want. Source entity or caster entity is a Gaunt, is the unit that firing this projectile, right? Trying to use this weapon. And let's see the next step. The impact effect is calling what uh, Gaunt weapon set one. And Gaunt weapon set one is trying to execute a search radius and a damage. And let's see. So the search radius and damage. Let's get to the damage first. So damage is just the first projectile launch at this unit. It reached its this unit and it's just do 8 amount of damage to the what's the target? The target. So it will do damage to worker one. If you choose caster or source here, the Gaunt will be the one that's received the damage, right? And let's take a look at the search radius, the search location, which is a effect location, if you can see, right? So it is using target point. So at this stage, the target of search radius is come from the set one, right? The set one's target come from the bounce missile launcher one, and none of these effects has changed your target. Your target is still worker one, so it will start a search radius at this worker one's target point. If even if you choose, I don't think it matters if you choose entity or point here. It doesn't matter. That all that matter is the target here, and It it does a search radius with max targets as 1 and the radius as 3.5 and there's a search filter. And it will do what? It will do the bounce missile launcher too. So this is where the magic gonna happen. So because this is a search radius one, right? It's a finder that we define. It will give you one or more entity. What does that even mean? Give you an entity. So because the given entity will be your new target. So if we look at the missile launcher 2, the impact location is still target entity, which is the same as bounce missile launcher 1 the impact location is always entity target, but it happens to do two different units, right? Because this missile launcher 2 is called by search radius 1, and search radius 1 will find units in its area, and fire those effects, fire the game effects with that with the found unit as its new target. So the target has been changed. So the impact location, you still put target entity and it will fire that projectile to this new worker 2. Then what about the launch location? We have target entity with Gaunt weapon missile launcher 1 as the effect parent. So what is this, right? Let's go back to the archetype ID we just talked about. This is this one. This is the first projectile. So when your Gaunt fire your first projectile, the caster and the source is your Gaunt and your target is your worker 1, right? So if you do this, the launch location of your missile launcher 2 of your second projectile, it will be the target of your first projectile, which is worker 1. Yay. So basically what this does is it shoots a projectile from worker 1 to worker 2. So I want to explain more about why we use effect parent here. This is not just about showcasing the effect parent. As if for players or map makers who have been using this for a while, you may notice that we can put origin here because this unit is also your origin target, right? You don't need to put such long sentence of Gaunt weapon bounce missile launcher 1. But like I said before, this Gaunt's bouncing projectile actually can bounce 2 times. So if you go to the data editor and look at, there are 3 missile launcher. If you look at missile launcher 3 and look at its impact location, oh, its launch location, for the third projectile, its launch location is the Gaunt weapon bounce missile launcher 2, because the third projectile should come from the target of second projectile. So in this case, you cannot put origin here because it's the first uh, target, right? So I think this is a good way to keep your to remind yourself that what we actually want here, and to keep these two being similar to give future designers or map makers idea about why we are using this kind of stuff, how to name this to make the future you understand this better. And yeah, this is pretty about much about the how to use effect parent to you make a bouncing projectile, right? And then our last example will be the Cinder Storm, the Maloc ultimate, and I'm gonna use this to explain entity location, the difference between entity and point. And this Cinder Storm is also my favorite ability that I made when I was at First Run Studios. So I put for this entitled map 4, I put Maloc here already, and I put Magma Dome here. And to do what I'm gonna show you, I'm going to go to the Cinder Storm and I'm gonna check this as false, the channeling resist push. So basically what Cinder Storm is, I can go through this quickly with you. Cinder Storm. Cinder Storm is the channeling ability. It will call a caster persistent so that with the channeling flags on so that it will tell the game that this unit is still keep channeling until this persistent is finished. and its periodic effect is every 0.25 seconds, it will do something, do a search radius, and it will do it 60 times, so it's 15 seconds at least, right? And for the search radius, I actually, yeah, so it will, so this is a version of search radius in Untitled Map 4, so it lose some blue highlighted changes, but what it does is it will search a radius and find one target. And if you find a target, it will call Cinderstorm persistent target random location. Which this gonna do is it's will just if since you find a target already, it will shoot a fireball from the sky to a random location related to this target. You find by this search radius. But if there is no target found, it will find a random location around the caster so that you can see some fireballs, even there is no enemies around you. So this ultimate can look cool. I really like this effect no target found because I added it, and it makes this ultimate really cool. And so if we look at this caster random location and target random location, both of these has effect initial to Cinderstorm target persistent. This is the persistent that actually calling the fireball. It has the Unreal actor called this. So this is the actual persistent that we're dropping a fireball from the air to at a target location and explode and doing damage. And all before I just finding stuff, right? And so for that's why both caster and target random location will be calling this so the same thing. So the different things is just one is near the target, one is near the caster, and the uh, offsets probably different. So let's get to it. So the caster random location is the effect location is caster entity, and search radius search location is also caster entity. So I'm gonna show you is since we checked the flags of resist push to false, if we trying to move the Maloc while he is channeling these abilities, the Cinder Storm should be following him, right? So the fireballs should still like firing nearby him instead of the location. Let's see.
For the Dominant, fire from the sky.
And this is current code caster random location. I'm going trying to use the Magma Dome to push it. And you can see the fireball still like a circle around Meta. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to change the caster entity to be caster point. To be more specific, original caster point. So we are gonna find the Sinner Storm. Gonna find this, change this to point, and change the search radius, search location to be point. This actually doesn't matter because the caster is always, the origin source, and in most cases it doesn't matter you use origin course caster or non-caster or whatever. uh, effect parents caster Z, so it should be the same unless there are some effect that can change the caster. That will be a different cases, but it rarely happen. So what will happen this time is since we are using the caster point instead of caster entity, what I
The
am
blade
expecting to see is
beckons fire from the
these
sky.
fireballs should not be following Maloc, right? Maloc is already here. So the fireballs are still falling from the sky to at where Maloc was when he started channeling this Cinder Stone.
Obey.
So this is what I was trying to show you the entity location, the entity or point. It matters. It matters a lot, especially for these kind of channeling abilities. Yes, I think I have covered everything I wanted to talk about. Thank you. See you next time.